Welcome to No Excuses. My name is Mary Fran, and today we need to finish up reviewing the books that I read in 2024. Have a couple of them there. Rest assured, I have already started reading in 2025, so you'll have some more books to read. I did have some good ones this week, so stay tuned. The first book I read was called The Lost Art of Keeping Secrets, and this was another one of those sweeping sagas that had no plot. Okay, it had a plot. Very, very tiny. It is set after World War II. There is a lady living with her mother and father in the ancestral home. The father had passed away in the war. Life was rough. They didn't have a lot of money. The house was falling apart. Things were going bad. And this girl met a random stranger and they became friends. That's it. Okay, not quite. So they met a stranger. She met the stranger and became friends. She became friends with the stranger's aunt and the stranger's cousin, and just things happened. Yeah. What can I say? That's kind of the story. Was there a whole romantic thing happening? Not really. Kind of. I'm telling you, the plot on this thing was so weak that it was ridiculous. In the midst of all this nonsense, you find at the end that there is a connection between the mystery family and her family. It's really, really loose. It's very, very vague. It's just really odd. What can I say? So I read that and it took me a long time to get through because it really was nonsense. I kept reading going, we're going to get to the plot sooner or later. We're going to get to the plot today. And it didn't happen. It was well written, but the plot was so weak and it just gave you random things. And, yeah. So, yeah, I finished that. It's a 2. I wouldn't say don't read it, but I wouldn't really highly recommend it. So reeling from the drama of the nonsense book that really had little plot and just kind of kept rambling on with nonsense, I decided that I needed something lighthearted, something fun, and I turned to Fluff. Now, if you don't know me, Fluff is what I call romance because it's easy to read. If you have to set it aside for a day, it's easy to pick up. It always makes you feel good at the end. Fluff. So I headed to Prime Reading. So if you don't know, Amazon Prime members, you can download books onto your Kindle app for free. So I went to the freebies and I picked a no-nonsense romantic little ditty. I actually picked one from a series called Under the Mistletoe because, it was about Christmas at this point. So I'm like, Christmas reading, bring it on. So I picked it up. It was one of 5 in the series and I was like, okay, cool. If it's a really quick fluff, I'll be able to pick up the other ones and boom, boom, boom. I have 5 done. Cleanse my palate from this long saga of nothing and we'll move on. So I picked up the first one and I found out that it was actually a short story. So yes, I was able to get through all 5 of them. For the sake of the review, I'm going to review them kind of as a clump to begin with because these books were really basic. Talk about no plot. Okay, there was a plot. You are introduced to a man and a woman, and 9 times out of 10, one has a crush on this one, or it's love at first sight or something like that, and they get together. Boom. That's the way it is. Very, very short, very, very quick, very, very easy. Not a whole lot in plot because, hey, they just meet, they get together. There is not really a whole lot of angst, you know how the normal plot lines go. Not a whole lot of that. I mean, maybe a little bit of, well, we don't live in the same state. Oh, we don't do this. Little teeny tiny things like that, but nothing major. Very, very quick read. Christmas feelings, feel goods, that kind of stuff. They are very spicy. If you don't want to read about sex, don't read it because they are a lot spicier than I probably would have chosen on my own. Okay, who am I lying? I probably would have chosen anyway. I'm a freak. So that's what they were. I will go through and give you just a real brief overview of each one. The first one is called Only Santa's in the Building, and this is about a lady who is living in an apartment building, and she starts getting these secret gifts on her door at Christmas. Doesn't know who they are, but she's enjoying them, and it's bringing her up. It's bringing her cheer up because it's a rough Christmas for her. And then she meets the person that gave her the gift. Boom, badooms. The next one is called All by My Elf. This one I had a hard time working with. There are 3 people in his car. You find out that they are all professors, interim professors, or, whatever they call them. They're not full tenure professors. And they have to take jobs between semesters to pay the bills. And so all 3 of them got a job as a marketing, and they're driving around in some kind of weird vehicle that generates a lot of stuff. Think Oscar Mayer Wienermobile. And, there's a whole little bit of secret love interest, and then she's jealousy, and it doesn't last long. Ends happy. Merriment and Mayhem is the next one. And this one has mayhem and disaster. This girl is always getting into some situations. And there's a fireman involved. Take the rest as you want, because you'll probably be right. Cruel Winter with You is the 4th one that we're going to mention. And this one was similar. There was a gentleman who had always been in love with the girl. They get thrown together on Christmas Eve. Boom, bada boom, bada booms. And yes, there were some booms because remember I told you, lots of sex. And last but not least out of the series, there was Merry Ever After. This is about a single lady who has a child, and she's trying to get her life together, and she's working, and this gentleman keeps coming into the store and trying on clothes. Kept coming in because he liked her just a little bit. And that's the story. Quick, easy reads. I mean, seriously, it was 5 books, but for the sake of argument, we could probably say it was worth 1. I would rate these as a 3. They were solid reads, a little bit, they were solid reads. There wasn't a lot to them, but they were a solid read. They were feel good. There was nothing bad about them. There was just a little fluff reading. So fluff. Fluffity fluff, fluff, fluff. Next up on the list, we have The Italian Ballerina. The Italian Ballerina is one of these ones that has a couple different, side-by-side stories. You're reading a story about this gentleman in 1939 before the war. You're reading about this gentleman also during the war and hearing his wartime experiences. And then you're also getting the story from this gentleman's granddaughter and another gentleman. So there's a couple stories that are just kind of right down the line. And that's okay. That's good. They follow it through. It's easy to follow. For a little bit, I was a little confused going, who is this court? Who is this person? And, because you know how sometimes when you're reading these side-by-side stories, it does get a little confusing. But the book is good. It is about a gentleman, and the base of the story is a gentleman in World War II was a medic, and he ended up doing something very heroic. He saved a little girl who had just seen her parents shot down. She was a Jew, and he took steps to do it. And so you see from the beginning, the before the war, you're seeing things build up. Then you're getting the little bits and pieces here and there of the story of what happened in the war, and then you're seeing the aftermath of his grandchild discovering this about her grandfather and discovering this, and there was things that happened. It was a good book. It was a very good book. It touches your soul. It touches a lot of points. I would actually rank this as a high 3. Yeah. No, tell me about that. Last but not least, and it is a little bit more because it was not just a 1 week, it was probably about a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks. Last but not least, we have The Berlin Letter. This book was very fascinating to me. I've never really read much about the Berlin Wall. I don't know a whole lot about it. I mean, I was alive and I watched them tear it down, and it was a good thing. But the actual history, the actual life behind the wall, that kind of stuff, I've never really touched on much. Now, I did read a book just recently that actually did talk about it a little bit. So when I saw this, and I'm like, bring it on. And so I picked it up. And this book actually starts right before the Berlin Wall went up. It was a story about a lady and her husband. Her husband had bought into all the ideology. They were there, and the wife was not. So the morning that the actual Berlin Wall, or actually not the wall, but the the real wall, but the precursor, the barbed wire, went up, she went looking for her parents who lived on the other side, just by a block or two. And in desperation, because she did not buy into the ideology and she could see what was going to happen, she managed to throw her child, who was like 2 or 3 at the time, over the wall into her parents' arms. And this child was then raised by her grandparents outside of the wall. And this mother that did this was heartbroken. The light went out of her life. And her husband was still in there, and he was still buying into all of the ideology that was there. And eventually he slowly started to see the light, the real truth of what was happening. The grandfather ended up moving his family to America. And the story picks up, and you have, once again, bits and pieces of back and forth between current and old. And the story picks up with the granddaughter, who's now in her late 20s. And you're getting her story. And she works for the CIA as a code breaker, because her grandfather had taught her codes as a baby, as a child. Like when she went to get her Christmas gift, she had to break the code to find out where her Christmas gift would be, that kind of stuff. And she sees some letters at work that reminded her of her grandfather. So she went looking for these letters that she thought her grandfather had, and her grandfather had passed away. And she found them. And what she found was letters from her father inside the wall. And there were code in them. He had been, for most of the years that she was growing up and most of her adulthood, he had been sending letters to his father-in-law, coded with all of the secret information. Dude, that's cool. And she said it sets her off on a great thing. It's a really good book. I thought it was really neat. It was a piece of history and a part of history that I actually don't normally read about. So it really opened up my eyes to a lot. I would also rank this as a high 3. It might even be a 4 because it was well written and it me on the edge of my seat. So yeah, I liked it. So those are the books that I read in the last week or two of 2024. I had a bomb. I had some fluffy fluffs, and I had 2 really good books. So let me know, have you read any of these? Boop, ba-da-doop, boop, boop. And I'm like really, really curious now. Do you guys read fluff? What do you call your fluff reading? Your little romantic ditties? Do you read fluff? I do. I admit it. It's the clear mind. It's like no thought involved. I don't have to think about, what political is happening. Fluff, fluff, fluff. I like it. Do you like fluff? Let me know. There's no shame in the game. Anyway, keep reading. Even though it is fiction, a lot of times, it is still opening your mind to different environments, different experiences, different times. And all of that is knowledge up here. Boom, ba-da-dum, boom, boom. Okay, I'm in a really crazy mood, so I'm going to let you go. And in the meantime, no excuses.